Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Hey, listen to this. All it needed was a new starter. Got a great deal on eBay. Did it myself.
Yeah, that's cool. But how about the soft purr of an upgraded exhaust when it fits just right?
For me, it's the little things. Like these new windshield wipers from eBay I installed.
From small fixes to big upgrades, eBay has all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hello everybody and welcome to 3D Printing Basics. I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in getting every single episode a week before its release and ad-free, then please head over to my Patreon. The link will be in the show notes, and like I said, you can get every single episode ad-free and a week before its initial release date. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you like this episode. Hello and welcome back to 3D Printing Basics. This is episode number 71, and in this week's episode we are going to be discussing turning recycled bottles into 3D printing filament. We're going to talk about how to do it, some pros and cons to doing it, and if it makes sense for you to do it in your 3D printing journey. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you everybody for listening. Your support means the world to me, and with that being said, let's jump right into today's episode. So first things first, we need to talk about what kind of bottle that you need to use. Most common bottles, like water bottles and things like that, are going to be made out of PET, and that is the type of plastic that you want to use. You can't really use any other plastic, or at least I haven't seen anybody use any other kind of plastic other than PET when it comes to recycling bottles into 3D printing filament. And there's a really easy way to tell. You can check around the bottle. Usually it's on the bottom, and there will be a sort of triangle type logo, and it will say PET below. And that is how you know that it is in fact a PET bottle and you can use it for recycling filament. And it's the same stuff that PETG is made out of. The only difference is that PETG has glycol in it, which is making the overall material easier to print. And you can still print with PET, which is why we are able to use these recycled bottles. I have seen some very, very expensive and complex home setups where they actually add the glycol in themselves. But for this particular instance, we are going to assume that we are just novices like myself and most of these listeners are. And we are just going to talk about keeping it simple with the PET bottles. So some of the pros is that they are strong. They're semi-flexible, they have great layer adhesion, and of course they're recyclable. So with some plastics, you can't just shred them or cut them and then reuse them as 3D printing filament because they are not recyclable in that sense. So PET is really good at being reused, and so that is something that you don't have to worry about, which is definitely very nice if you are considering on recycling any kind of plastic into 3D printing filament. You can want to make sure that it actually can be reused and that it doesn't fatigue super bad and that it isn't just going to fall apart the instant you try and use it in your 3D prints. This episode is brought to you by PCBWay. Ready to take your electronics projects to the next level? PCBWay offers everything you need, from custom PCBs to 3D printing and even CNC machining, all under one roof. They're trusted by engineers and makers worldwide for their exceptional quality and fast turnaround. And here's a special deal for listeners of 3D Printing Basics. Use the promo code 3DPrinting2, SQUARED, to get $10 off your first order. Start your next project with PCBWay and see the difference for yourself. Head over to PCBWay.com today. All right, let's talk about how this works. So step number one, you're going to have to prep your bottles, which means removing the labels and cleaning them thoroughly. You can remove labels with dish soap and overall clean it with dish soap, but then you also need to make sure that you dry them completely. As I've said in my previous episodes talking about PETG, it is very hygroscopic, which means it is very prone to absorbing moisture, whether it's in the air or it's just water from washing the bottles themselves. So make sure that after you are done cleaning and washing these bottles that you let them dry completely, or else you're going to have some issues when you go to print this PETG or even when you're just trying to recycle it. Once you are done cleaning and your bottles are thoroughly dried out, there are two different ways that you can go. You can either shred them or you can strip them. Shredding them involves usually just tossing it in a blender or some other kind of shredder and getting those teeny tiny little bits of plastic that you then are going to use. And then a strip cutter usually involves running the bottle along its width, so kind of rolling it down a fixed knife or blade so that you end up getting strips out of that bottle that are the same width overall and very, very consistent. In my opinion, I've never done this before, but it seems like you'd be better off shredding it, just because it's not as big of a deal if the shredded bits are not the same exact width, and you can pack more of them into a single area, which would mean more efficient melting / extruding when you do eventually get to that point. But it seems like either way works really well. There are definitely home setups that I've seen for both, and they are pretty easy to set up and get going. Step 3 is where the magic happens. That's where you extrude the filament, and so you can either feed the strips or the shreds that you have into a filament extruder. Now, I've seen professional ones like Filextruder, Filabot. I've also seen people build their own with just a nozzle, and then they heat it up, and then they run it through the nozzle. So that is definitely something that you're going to have to do your research on. I would definitely suggest trying a DIY setup first, just because these professional filament extruders are very, very expensive. That usually means that you need to go through a whole system, which means not just buying the extruder, but you have to buy this and that and the other thing, and that could just end up running you thousands and thousands of dollars, which, if you're not even sure if you want to get into this, is a lot of money to get it. To just try it. So I would definitely suggest trying your own DIY setup first. It would save you a lot of money, and it's definitely a good feeling out process to make sure that this is something you really want to do. And so basically what this does is it melts all the plastic together, and then it extrudes it through the same diameter nozzle, so a 1.75 millimeter nozzle, to turn it into the correct width of filament that you want. And then it cools them, whether it runs it through fans or it runs it through a tube that is surrounded by cold water. That then cools the filament enough to be able to be wound onto a spool, and then you get your roll of filament. So overall, it's a pretty simple sounding process. It's pretty easy. It's not super difficult, but there are definitely some steps that you need to be wary of, and you definitely need to make sure that the diameter of the filament that's coming out of whatever nozzle you use is consistent. Because if you have a 1.75 millimeter nozzle and you're getting some parts that are 1.8 millimeters, other parts that are 1.7 millimeters, that's going to be a pretty large problem when it comes to actually working your prints. Whether you're using a Bowden setup or a direct drive setup, you will run into problems there. Now, in order to double check this, you can either use calipers and just check every foot or so, or if you don't want to stand there the whole time, you can get what's called a laser filament diameter sensor for accuracy. And what this will do is check the diameter every single bit that comes out of that nozzle. It will check it and make sure that everything is running smoothly. So that's definitely an option, but if you start getting into that, then the setup definitely starts getting a little pricey. I've seen people use these DIY setups that cost anywhere from $50 to $500, and then, of course, like I said, the professional setups can cost thousands of dollars, so that's definitely something to consider too if you're looking to get into this. If you want to get into it professionally, honestly, I wouldn't suggest it personally, but that's up to you. It's just a lot of setup, and it's a high cost to entry for overall something that if you want to recycle your prints, if you have a passion for that, then by all means go right ahead and do it. But if you're trying to get into it to make money, like reselling recycled filament, just the margin and the overall cost, it's not there. I wouldn't say that it is. And that's just simply me speculating. I don't have any numbers to back it up, but I think if recycled filament was something that was popular and worth making money off of, then I think that there would be a lot more companies out there that actually do it. I think that there's a reason that these big companies like Filament or like Polymaker, Overture, all those people don't really have recycled filaments. So that's just something to think about. But if you're doing it for fun, you can use a DIY setup, you can recycle your own bottles, you can have fun with your kids, or you can just enjoy printing stuff out of recycled filament. It's definitely a nice option. It's a fun option to go through. It's definitely a learning process, but once you get the hang of it, it's relatively simple. And it's definitely something that can turn your recycled bottles and recycled plastic into fun 3D prints. And with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. Big shout out to Nathan, who actually left a comment under one of my episodes. It was episode number 67. And he said, "Hey man, love your podcast. Could you make one where you're talking about turning PET bottles into filament?" That was a really good idea, Nathan, and thank you for giving me that idea. I hope that you especially enjoy this episode, and I hope everybody else enjoyed this episode and now knows a thing or two about possibly recycling your plastic into 3D printable rolls of filament. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.